Poison-laced toothpaste, gunshots disguised as bomb shrapnel. From the Roman Empire to the 21st century, these assassinations still impact our world today. Julius Caesar's assassination is probably one of the most famous. Caesar was a Roman politician and general who was popular with the masses. After he was named dictator for life in 44 B.C.E., the Senate feared losing power and hatched a plan to end his life. According to the World History Encyclopedia, the group of conspirators included friends of Caesar and enemies alike. As many as 60 senators were involved in the plots, though only a few are remembered today. Brutus is the main betrayer in William Shakespeare's version of events, which popularized the phrase et tu, Brute, but in reality, Decimus was the closest man to Caesar involved. For this reason, he was chosen to convince Caesar to go to the meeting where his murder would take place, even though Caesar wanted to stay home. On the Ides of March, the Roman name for the 15th of the month, Caesar was stabbed 23 times in an ambush on the Senate floor. The assailants fled to the Capitoline Hill, where they were met with a mix of support and disgust. While the conspirators had hoped to restore the status quo and regain power lost under Caesar, the ultimate effect of his killing was the rise of Octavian, also known as Augustus, who consolidated power and became the first emperor of Rome. In essence, the opposite happened and power shifted hands as the republic turned into an empire. By 1865, John Wilkes Booth had enough of Abraham Lincoln. Booth, an actor and vocal proponent of slavery, became part of several plots to kidnap the president and end the war. When the plots failed and the war ended, an enraged Booth hatched a plan to assassinate the president, vice president, and secretary of state at the same time, says Britannica. Booth was to go for the president, sneaking into his box at Ford's Theater.
It was a different era when the president was not as protected nearly as much as he should have been.
When the time came, he snuck into the box and shot Lincoln through the back of the head. He proceeded to jump onto the stage and yell one of two things, according to conflicting reports. Either Sic Semper Tyrannis, meaning thus always the tyrants, the state motto of Virginia, or the South is avenged. He then fled the theater on horseback. Lincoln was taken into care but died early the next morning. Lincoln was replaced by Vice President Andrew Johnson, a former senator who remained loyal to the Union despite his Southern heritage. However, Johnson's leniency toward the South in the Reconstruction era resulted in near-universal amnesty for Confederates, meaning the state leadership did not change much following the war. Recycled Southern state governments sought to maintain the status quo as much as possible, writing strict black codes that essentially put black Southerners in the same position as before the war. After Austria-Hungary annexed Bosnia-Herzegovina, Austria and Archduke Franz Ferdinand journeyed to his new territorial acquisition to view symbolic military exercises. The annexation was quite controversial, as Serbian and Bosnian nationalist sects had been growing since Austria first colonized Bosnia in 1878, and the exercises would be a show of power meant to dissuade any revolutionaries. Because of these tensions, Ferdinand's visit turned out to be a markedly bad idea. He was almost assassinated multiple times by the revolutionary group Young Bosnians. After smuggling bombs, guns, and even cyanide capsules across the Serbian border and into Bosnia, with history reporting that it has yet to be determined whether the Serbian government was involved or not, the Young Bosnians began to strike. They threw a bomb at the Archduke's car, which missed but injured bystanders, and were in close enough range to shoot but chickened out. Despite these near-death experiences, the Archduke and his wife decided to remain in country for their final scheduled event. As they were leaving, driving quickly to avoid more bombs, they accidentally turned down a side street where one of the disgruntled young Bosnians happened to be. Gavrilo Princip saw his moment and shot, striking both Ferdinand and his wife. The two died at the scene and Princip was taken into custody. The violent event led to World War I, with Austria-Hungary essentially blaming Serbia for the blood of its son, and different European powers taking sides. Patrice Lumumba was a renowned anti-colonial, pan-Africanist thinker and political leader in the Democratic Republic of the Congo's fight for independence from Belgium. Belgium accidentally got Lumumba elected as the DRC's first prime minister when they held democratic elections in an attempt to install a puppet regime. Despite several attempts to deny him, Lumumba took power and instituted a number of progressive policies. But Belgium wasn't giving up their mineral-rich colony without a fight. Lumumba called on the Soviets for help defending against the colonial oppressors, a move which angered the Western world due to Cold War tensions. It is worth mentioning he had called upon the UN for help first, and they refused. Chaos ensued, and multiple Western powers targeted Lumumba's life. Multiple plans were launched to incapacitate him, including hiring assassins and abductors. According to the New York Times, the CIA even flew in a rare poison to lace his toothpaste with. After a series of mishaps and failed attempts, Lumumba was kidnapped, tortured, and shot to death by a firing squad. Lumumba's death, though brutal, was not unique. He was one of 6 such murders that decade where African leaders' deaths were plotted by Western powers. The deaths of Lumumba and his peers had a lasting effect on Western-African relations and has set the continent back majorly in terms of progressive policies. Tensions remain high even today, prompting Belgium to formally apologize in 2018 for their role in the assassination. Sometimes referred to as the architect of apartheid, Hendrik Verwoerd was the Prime Minister of South Africa from 1958 until his death in 1966. According to history professor Christopher Marx, Verwoerd's series of degrees in psychology and sociology made him a fundamental player in creating institutions of racial oppression across South Africa. It perhaps comes as no surprise that the man who came to epitomize racial animosity in South Africa faced not 1 but 2 assassination attempts. In the first attempt, carried out by businessman David Pratt, Verwoerd sustained 2 shots to the face but survived. 6 years later, parliamentary page Dimitris Sefendis stabbed Verwoerd to death after ambushing him on the Senate floor. Both Pratt and Sefendis were tried under the pretense of lunacy. The categorization of these individuals as insane was meant to deflect negativity from the apartheid regime. And yet, even though the system has fallen, the story of Sefendis and Pratt remain the same in popular consciousness. The enduring label of insanity placed upon those intent to destroy apartheid shows that great care must be taken when nations seek to reckon with their violent pasts. Propaganda can have a powerful hold on a society even after the systems it meant to protect have been dismantled.
Martin Luther King was shot and was killed tonight in Memphis.
Martin Luther King Jr. was standing on the balcony of a Memphis motel when he was killed. The manhunt that followed led to the arrest of James Earl Ray, an escaped convict who was apprehended in London's Heathrow Airport. He confessed nearly a year later and was charged with a 99-year sentence for the murder of the civil rights leader. Since the trial, King's family has repeatedly asserted their belief in Ray's innocence. Their skepticism lies in the FBI's repeated harassment of King, a convenient bag of evidence left at the scene, and Ray's post-trial insistence that he was set up by a man named Raoul. Though the government has supposedly debunked the Raoul story, a man came forward in 1993 with conflicting evidence. He owned the diner under the hotel room Ray supposedly operated out of and confessed in civil court to being part of a government-led plan to assassinate King for which Ray was the scapegoat. Based on this evidence, jurors at the trial found the government guilty of conspiring to assassinate the civil rights leader. MLK's death led to the expedited passing of the Fair Housing Act in 1968, which King had been campaigning for leading up to his death. Harvey Milk was the first openly gay man to sit on the San Francisco Board of Supervisors and only the 5th openly gay person in the country to take public office. After his 1977 election, Milk dedicated himself to issues like fair housing and ending workplace discrimination, and even made friends with political peers who thought differently from him. One such frenemy was Dan White, a pro-police Catholic who thought so highly of Milk he invited him to his son's baptism. Yet nearly a year later, White shot both Milk and then Mayor George Moscone in their respective City Hall offices.
Both Mayor Moscone and Supervisor Harvey Milk have been shot and killed.
Those close to White claim his main motive for the murders was feeling politically betrayed, not zealous homophobia. White had quit his position during a breakdown, and when he begged the mayor for his job back, Milk lobbied against him. No matter his intent, White killed one of America's few openly gay politicians at the time. After White received a lenient sentence, protests broke out across the city. What resulted were the White Night Riots, a series of clashes between gay people and the police, who had fundraised for White's defense team after peaceful protests were met with confrontation. The events brought gay issues to greater prominence across the U.S., and Milk's legacy carved the way for a series of LGBTQ+ candidates to take office. Yitzhak Rabin dedicated his term in office to peace. Before his untimely death, he had committed to Palestinian self-rule and ended a war with Jordan that spanned nearly half a century. Rabin, a former soldier, had spent 30 years fighting against the accords he now forged, making him a symbol of the peace that could be achieved in the region. Not everyone wanted peace. The Zionists, a group of Israeli nationalists who opposed the recognition of Palestine as a separate and legitimate state, did not agree with Rabin's tactics. Multiple extremist rabbis even issued statements saying it would be acceptable to kill Rabin. It was for this reason that, when attending a peace rally, Rabin's cohort urged him to wear a bulletproof vest. But Rabin loved the people of Israel so deeply he refused to believe someone in his nation would want to hurt him. This belief proved to be fatal, as Rabin was shot twice in the back by devout Zionist Yigal Amir.
Though we no longer hear his deep and booming voice, it is he who has brought us together again here.
Multiple news outlets called the assassination one of the most successful in political history. Amir got exactly what he wanted, as the peace between Israel and Palestine that had come so close under Rabin quickly crumbled under his successors. Conflict in the region continues to be a hot-button issue today, and with increasing violence. According to human rights watch group B'Tselem, Israel killed an estimated 133 Palestinians in 2020 in Palestine-occupied territory. Benazir Bhutto was the first female leader to be democratically elected to a majority Muslim nation, becoming Prime Minister of Pakistan in 1988. Despite her milestone achievement, Bhutto was somewhat of a controversial figure. After being convicted of corruption during her 2 terms in office, which also involved the assassination of her brother and a failed coup d'etat, the politician returned from self-exile after 8 years to run for a 3rd term. Bhutto's prospects for winning a 3rd term looked bright, but it would be dangerous, as warned by her competitor and current head of state Pervez Musharraf. Despite his warning, Musharraf denied her foreign protection, instead offering her bodyguards from the Pakistani police force. And the protection proved necessary after one unsuccessful attempt in October of 2007. Bhutto was killed the following December. Though the Pakistani Taliban initially claimed responsibility for her death, the Pakistani government's handling of the situation led to much suspicion. The official narrative was that Bhutto had died when shrapnel from a suicide bomber's vest cracked her skull, but doctors performing her autopsy asserted they were told to keep quiet about the gunshot wounds they found. Sources close to Bhutto also claim she received a threatening phone call from Musharraf just months before the election. Though Bhutto's time in office was far from perfect, the rift between a political and military elite that became apparent during her 2 terms in office was only widened by her violent death.